The following production is intended for entertainment purposes only. We are not legal professionals. We do not speak for any government agency, and the opinions expressed here are our own. Relax.
I should
Oh,
have
it's
asked.
so hard for me not to say what's going on, man.
It's all good. I should have asked before this, but I think I know the answer. This is the correct account. We're not on a timer on this. I don't see a timer up top.
Yeah, we're good.
Sweet.
So what people didn't see is when you
Wait,
connect.
first, hi, everybody. This is the
Hey,
start of the
what's
podcast.
up?
Hi, everybody. We don't have to say what's up to me and you because we've been talking.
Okay, that's fair.
But hi, everybody. Welcome to
For
Lawless.
anybody else who joined us, welcome.
Yeah.
What's up?
All right.
So when you first came on, you were singing the Hulkamania song, the "I'm a Real American,"
Yeah.
and we were talking briefly about how like that song when I was a kid would like that still stirs up such emotion. And like especially when you think of like were you into WWF as a kid?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I sure was.
So like I was a straight up Hulkamaniac, man. Like
Okay.
Hulk Hogan was my guy. And so, you always had some different beefs, like a beef with Macho Man there for a while, and then they partnered
Yeah.
up or whatever. But the one that really gets me is when the earthquake. So Hulk Hogan was on the Brother Love show, and
Uh-huh.
the earthquake came and like knocked him over, jumped on his chest, whatever. Well, I took offense to that. Like I
Yeah.
was just devastated that the Hulkster was in such terrible condition. So I sent him a letter. I wrote him a letter telling him how much I hated the earthquake and how much I hoped like I wanted him to get well. Well, he sent me a postcard back and said
What?
well, at the time I thought it was from him. In hindsight, I realized that it was just like his PR team or whatever. But
Still.
but still, dude, I had that hanging on my wall for years. But he sent this postcard back and said that because of Hulkamaniacs like myself, he was going to be making a swift return. But anyway, I say all of that to say that when I heard that song, it just took me back, and I'm ready to go to battle, man. I'm ready to freaking go to war.
So when I was a kid, I was I wasn't a Hulkamaniac. I definitely rooted for Hulk Hogan, but I wonder if you had any dark horses, or maybe it's just because I've always, just the way I'm wired. I had dark horses that were not mainstream, but were still, I would say, good guys
Okay.
that charged me up like lightning. And I got a top three
Okay.
and maybe a top five, but Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
USA.
You
USA. Just
oh
hitting
he
dudes with
come
two
out
by
with a dang 2x4, son.
just
If
hitting dudes with 2x4s.
if you got a beef with someone, let's say you got a beef with someone and you go ring their doorbell, I'm like, I'm gonna settle this with Justin. And all of a sudden, while you're ringing the doorbell, the garage door opens, right? The garage door opens, steam piles out, and some bearded man in his underwear comes out wearing swinging a 2x4.
Just holding this 2x4 on his shoulder.
It's a wrap, son.
Yeah, lights out.
Go start digging your grave. Lay down. Lay down. Start practicing.
Okay, so Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Um, the Sting, right?
Yeah, but
I mean,
he was
WCW.
he was WCW.
Yes, but he was still my guy. We were a multi. I mean, we were a cultured family, right? We went WWF and WCW. We
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
hicks.
Yeah.
Um, so Hacksaw, Sting, and my main man, and I carry this with me still, the Ultimate Warrior, brother.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he was yacked out of his mind, but the
Dude,
way he starts,
dude, have you ever thought about how much cocaine was consumed
yeah,
backstage at old
yeah,
WWF?
I
I
sure
mean, it
have.
it had to have just been ridiculous. Um, yeah, dude, Ultimate Warrior. So I always used to have my birthday parties were always WWF themed.
Yeah.
And
You had cool parents.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And like I would take these strips of different colored cloths or whatever and wrap
Yeah.
them around my, too tight probably around my biceps and you know. Do you
I did
remember?
that in kindergarten and first grade to the point where both teachers told me to stop multiple times. Like construction paper or like the tablecloth, whatever we had, I'd rip that son of a gun and tie it around on my biceps. And to the point where, like, I remember my kindergarten teacher bending her knees and looking at me and be like, Clayton, you cannot do that anymore. I'm like, yeah. No one
Clayton,
tells the Sting. No one
you,
tells the Ultimate Warrior what they can do because lightning's going to come down from the sky.
oh yeah, brother.
um, Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that. Do you remember? I think it was a WrestleMania match, but it was between Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to say it was like 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, it was just nonstop. And then at the very
Trading
end,
licks.
and so the Ultimate Warrior, like all his paint had worn off, and like they were just going to battle. And I feel like this might have actually been a Macho Man match, but I feel like at the end they raised Hulk's hand, and then he went over and raised Ultimate Warrior's hand, and it was just like, dude, it was
I'm feeling
monumental.
electricity right now.
Yeah,
when
dude.
you say that.
As a kid, I was like, there can actually be world peace. Like we can work it out. Um, but okay, so you've got
Hacksaw,
you've got Sting, you
Sting,
got
Ultimate
Ultimate
Warrior.
Warrior.
And I'm so embarrassed. I'm losing their names, but they were part of my identity. The brothers. I think I might be combining a few, but the brothers that had the spikes on their shoulders.
Oh, the demolition. Yeah, it was demolition.
Okay, them and the guy who was part of Scott Steiner. But he was in like Scott Steiner's crew. He wore a singlet and he had a shaved head, and he bit people all the time and played like a dog. He'd go, oh. I can't remember his name, but yeah, those were my dark horses. That
What about
laid the foundation.
the Bushwhackers? You remember them?
That's them.
Okay.
That's the ones
Freaking,
I'm thinking of.
they would lick people's faces. Like
Yes.
they were weird.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
With
Those are
Demolition, I think Demolition had Hawk and Animal. I think those were their names. But they had they had the shoulder pads with the spikes on them.
Okay.
What about Jake the Snake?
Jake the Snake, I liked him a lot. Even back then, I could tell he was playing with fire. Like I knew he was walking a razor's edge, and we were Pentecostal, but we made sure people knew that we weren't snake handlers like them's crazies. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anytime I saw someone with a snake, I'm like, uh-oh, he might be communing with the devil. And if
well, especially his snake's name was Damien.
Yeah.
Which for some reason I always associated with the devil. I don't know why.
Yeah, Damien. Yeah, sure. Sounds like a demon.
Sounds like Satan's nickname.
Do you know? I've made up. There was a Damien in my life who might be a subscriber to this, that for a decade or more, we were mortal enemies. And there's no need to go into this. Do you know a lot of Damiens? Do you know a lot of Damiens?
No, I presently I interact with one. I've known one other before that.
My guard is up around Damien's.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah. My guard is up around Damien's. And what else? Who else? Damien's right now at the top of the list, but there's a couple other people that almost like what's his name? The guy who is in Property and Evidence, whenever we were talking to him, his back got straight and his eyes got real wide. That's how I feel when some of these people like shake my hand. Hey, I'm Damien. I'm like, okay, well, I gotta go.
Yeah. Um, so we never really got into why you were singing that.
Oh, well, I am a real I was pumped up to see my homeboy. Um, but the main thing is I watched Trump speak at the RNC last night, the Republican National Convention. He closed it down, and it was an hour-long speech. It was impressive. He he was going hard for an hour, and it was all I was afraid he was going to start throwing out stats. I get real nervous whenever he starts throwing out stats and numbers because those are so weird. Like sometimes someone's going to call it a lie because
Yeah.
or someone's going to call it fake or whatever. He didn't throw out a lot of stats and numbers. He only mentioned Joe Biden once. Um he talked about Afghanistan. I was going to be livid if he didn't talk about Afghanistan, and he gave Afghanistan some time. Um went down all I mean, it was just golden. He was like, "Oh, he talked about unity for a good like 5 or 10 minutes. He talked about uh how he's going to work for Democrats. He's not going to work just for Republicans. He said, I'm going to work for Democrats and the Republicans and the independents and all Americans, and was just talking about jobs, talking about the economy, talking about immigration, talking about the military, talking I barely, I mean, I say barely. I can't I don't even remember the example, but I know he did bring up the assassination attempt, but didn't even dwell on it, like brought it up a little bit and the place went wild. Didn't even bring it up. It's one of those he was playing he was playing on the momentum, and golly does he have some momentum right now.
Yeah.
But he was just riding the wave, and he did it very well. Why I was singing I Am a Real American is because the Hulkster was up there um one or two people before him, and uh he was Hulk Hogan. He was not Terry, he was the Hulkster. And he's like, when they go after my president brother, that's just a bridge too far. I can't take it. Tore his shirt.
Did he really? I was going to ask if you.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yes, he did.
Oh.
And I stood up and raised my fist like this. Yes. Man, I'm not a Trumper.
Right.
I obviously don't have anything against him, but I'm not a MAGA. I'm not a Trumper. But it was just so powerful. Your wood is wet if you watched this RNC and did not get fired up.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to now YouTube it or something and watch it.
Yeah.
But so since our last, like we've had this conversation, but this has happened since our last podcast, the
And I'm
assassination
gonna have to
attempt.
start uploading them like right after. Like I'm gonna have to upload this as soon as you send it to me, because with the way current events are going, you can't keep up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what we had talked about is when that whole thing went down, like I never would have, it's not anywhere on my bingo card that Donald Trump looks cool.
Yeah.
But he looked freaking cool, man, with the blood on his face. And I couldn't tell. I thought he was saying fuck you, but it sounded like he was saying bite,
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 bite.
whatever he was
Yeah.
saying. But I was just like, dang, that's pretty, like that looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
dude.
and then like the the I think it was 50 Cent that kind of did a tribute to him or whatever. And I don't know, man. I think how you described it, riding the wave, a lot of momentum. Seems like he's got a lot of momentum right now.
That's what I was gonna say. Is he didn't even have to bring up the assassination attempt because he was wearing a bandage on his ear. Everybody knows where that bandage came from, son.
He's gonna
You
be
ain't
like,
gotta mention it.
who was the rap Nelly? He's gonna be like Nelly, just wearing a band-aid on his face for the rest of his life.
There was this staff sergeant that he was an E6 in the Army. He was on my fob. I never spoke to the guy. Me and my buddy Cody would see him in the chow hall. he was infantry something, but not in my command. We would just see him at the DFAC, which is our chow hall. We would see him at the DFAC. He had this giant scar that went like under his cheekbone, but perfectly around his mouth. And you could see it was still pink, like on the line. Like he had gotten that in the last while. Like
Yeah.
that was not an old scar. And every time he walks by, me and my buddy Cody would be like, God damn, that's a badass. Like, Jesus, don't look at him. I'm not attracted to him. You're not. Shut up.
Right. Like that doesn't make us gay, does it? Like just
No, no,
he's
no.
a handsome man.
Yeah, but I'd rub some ointment on it if he asked me to. Whatever. He's an American.
Right. Just doing the Lord's work.
That's how Donald Trump looks with his, obviously it's a difference. Kind of.
Yeah.
But my man, they tried to take him out. He got shot for this country. They tried to kill him. A poor, I don't feel sorry for him, like on the surface level, but his brain was not developing. His brain was not developed, and he was taken advantage of by a bunch of, political ideology. I don't know enough about him, but I feel, in that way, I feel sorry for him. Like he's just a dumb kid. Tried to kill him because of his political beliefs and because of his political ideology. Like we have political violence here. We have a weaponized justice system that has gone after political rivals many ways. I mean, that's not a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
They all say it like we have to get them. What are our only options to get them? Stormy Daniels, files, that business dealings, hush money. Like they were going after him for all that stuff. Political violence, weaponizing the DOJ, straight up lies. And homie, you can't do anything to him. Now after this, you got to give up. Like I think if you're a Democrat, you're like, well, we got the next election to worry about.
Yeah.
The next presidency.
And think about that. Like all of the things that they've tried. And again, to your point, I'm not a MAGA guy. But like at this point, man, he's like Teflon. Everything, even so most of the stuff that they've thrown at him didn't stick, but even the stuff that sticks, it's like, he just rolls off.
Yeah. I don't think your morality, whatever, necessarily lines up with your ability to lead. Like I there's a whole wide spectrum and no one's perfect. God knows I'm not perfect. But so like there are some things I'm not crazy about the fact that he probably did, even though he still denies it, but he probably did have sex with Stormy Daniels while his wife was pregnant. That's the main thing as far as his morality stuff. I've heard he's a slippery businessman, but to be a multimillionaire businessman in New York City kind of seems like you had to be. Shady business dealings, probably banged a porn star while his wife was pregnant. They say his father was pretty well connected with the KKK. Like there's some things that you can question about him, but it doesn't seem to really affect it. Like,
yeah. Which I wonder if that's just because of results, because at the end of the day, we've all got values and we've all got standards. We've all got expectations. But even think about our previous job or any job you've been in. If someone produces, you're probably going to look the other way regarding some things. You didn't turn your ride sheet in on time. I'm not worried because you got however many cases you got a load of dope. Like,
yeah.
If you get results, which I think probably is where a lot of people land with him, like they would probably be like me, where, yeah, like he's braggadocious, he's just, I know people like him, and in real life, I can't stand them.
Yeah.
But hey, man, like if you're going to defend the country and if you're going to promote the country's best interests and if you're going to have results and jobs and all that kind of stuff, I can look past some things.
Well, and we don't have the luxury of voting, like as far as this election that's coming up, we don't have the luxury of voting for the perfect candidate, because there's obviously no perfect candidate, but we don't have the luxury of voting for, like, back then or even the future, like maybe in the 50s and 60s, Biden, or whatever side that I wouldn't vote for, maybe they would be a breath of fresh air and they would be very progressive. But right now, I don't even know if that makes sense. But right now, the economy's in the toilet, and it makes my blood boil whenever when I see on the news people say, "Oh, the economy's doing the best it's ever been," or "the economy's the best it's ever been." No, it's not.
Yeah.
Go to the grocery store. Look
Yeah.
at the price of houses. The economy is not the best it's ever been. Go look at the price of vehicles. So the economy and immigration, man, there's people very close to me and my family that just have this wild view of immigration. These weird extremes. I have an uncle, and obviously I'm not going to say their names, and if I do, I'll just say their first names. I don't think they watch this anyway, because they're bad family. But they I have an uncle who's down in Florida, and he's a military vet. I think he's pretty libertarian, but he's a never Trumper. And we were talking around the 4th of July when I was back in Kansas, and he was like, "It's so stupid to waste money on those fences. Those damn fences don't work. You know they don't work." He was like, "They'll just dig a hole or jump over or whatever." That goes against logic. That statement, of course fences work. That's
Right.
why we lock our doors.
Yeah.
That's why
That's why you have a fence around your yard.
That's why you have a fence around your yard. That's why every fob in Afghanistan or Iraq had giant fences. And
Yep.
when people were, this isn't a laughing matter. There were guys that I relieved, and anyway, that shot Taliban climbing over that fence. Like in the middle of the night, Taliban would just come up there and try to climb over the fence and get stitched up, because we're like, "Oh, there's our guy." Bah, 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 bah,
Yep.
bah, bah, bah.
Well, and
Because fences work.
the other thing is, I don't think anybody says that it's the end all be all. Like, it's
Of
not
course
the
not.
only solution. But if you've got I don't know, if you've got a leak in your boat, are you gonna, and you can slow it down? Are you gonna say, well, it's not gonna fix it, so we're just gonna leave the hole? Like, you're probably gonna say, hey, let's do this, and let's also work on some other things.
Yeah.
Which
I mean,
I think that
we're being invaded.
I think the thing that I find so frustrating about that whole conversation is just the insinuation that it's somehow racist, or that the argument is against that it's against groups of people. I can see a very legitimate, strong argument for protecting our borders, just to maintain our sovereignty. Like, if there's like nothing else, you don't have to. It doesn't even have to be political. Like, it just makes sense.
Shouldn't we control, or at least try to control? Because also, and my uncle who said that lives down in Florida, and he man, I'm really outing him now. He has a couple businesses.
I'm not going to say his name, but here's his address.
Here's everything about him. He lives on the coast, and so, like, I know this from the Navy, and he knows this from living on the coast, is like, you can take a boat from Cuba or from Venezuela or any of these, anywhere, or you could drive a boat from Russia and just drive it right up to Miami port, and like 99 times out of 100, no one's going to stop you. And you drive that boat right up to the port, throw your moor your boat, throw your rope around the pillar or whatever, come up, and if you want to, you can call the port authority and say, "Hey, I'm coming from out of the country." Then they'll come meet you, stamp your passport, investigate, or search through your boat, see if you're bringing anything in. Or you cannot call the port authorities and just go about your business. Like, our ports are not secured. So I'm not saying that fence, like you were saying, that fence isn't the end all be all, but it's something.
Does
It's
does
just wide open.
does anybody patrol that? Like, would that be the Coast Guard or?
Mhm. Yeah,
And
Coast Guard and some states have some agencies that do it, like Texas. What we call them Texas Highway Patrol, but it's not really their highway patrol, but it's their state police. They have like a riverine unit that patrols the Rio Grande. But I mean, you can just wait till that boat passes away, or wait till that boat goes, and then
yeah,
keep on going.
because when I say patrol, that makes me think of you and I out on 54. And yeah, we're on patrol, but there's a lot of stuff getting by us, and we're not out there 24/7. And you're on a
And
traffic stop and 25 other cars go by. Is that kind of the same principle that, yeah, we've got people there, but they can only do what they can do?
yes. And so like there might be one or two boat within, let's say, 20, 30, 40 miles of the other boat, and they can get to each other pretty quick, or something like that. A couple boats within 20, 30 miles patrolling, right? Um until some merchant marine is sinking out there, or until some yacht's going down. Then everybody goes up to that incident and tries to save him. And all of their, just like when we were a cop, all that other area that we were patrolling is now wide open.
Yeah.
And they still have to, follow the Constitution too. They can't,
Oh,
they have,
wow. Yeah. Because
they have,
you don't know that it's a citizen or not.
right.
Do they have to
And
have reasonable suspicion to?
sometimes they still have procedural authority and positional authority. So just like if you're coming into an airport, you still have to scan your bags, but they have to, like, the dog has to alert on someone in the airport for them to pull you out of line. Or you have to have like reasonable suspicion, like, hey, he's avoiding eye contact with me, he's shifty, or she's wearing a coat and it's July. Like,
Yeah.
you have to articulate why you're doing that.
Hmm.
Or else
Interesting.
you're gonna just be pulling over everyone. The argument is you're gonna be pulling over everyone that's brown. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
have some articulable, reasonable suspicion, even there.
Well, I mean, I don't take a hard line on it, but I do just think that I think that a lot of the rhetoric, um, political rhetoric that gets thrown out there, specifically against Trump, I just think that for your everyday person, I think it does more harm than good.
Yeah,
Because, like you said, it's obvious that we're not in the best economy. Like that, there's no doubt. And it's obvious that we've got all these problems going on in the country. And it's kind of like at my last brokerage before I left. Like it was in bad shape. But the owner kept saying, like, we're best we've ever been. We're strongest we've ever been. We got this, we got that. And everybody's looking around like, I mean, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I know you're lying to me. And
yeah.
if you're lying about that, then I just don't trust you. I would much rather you say, we got problems. Here they are. Here's what we're trying to do to address it.
Well, there's two options for this, and I think the media, I think they lie. Most obviously,
Yeah.
mainstream media is just straight up lying. But when it comes to the individuals themselves, like Biden or Kamala or even Trump, sometimes you're either lying, like you either know you're lying, or you're just so delusional you think you're telling the truth. And either way, I cannot trust you at that point. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you do think the economy is the greatest it's ever been because you're up in your ivory tower and you're so disconnected from the world and you're believing these reports. Maybe that's why you believe
Yeah.
it. Maybe that's why you think that. Okay, I understand why you think that, but I can no longer put my faith in you. Like, you don't know what it's like for me, obviously.
Yeah. Well, regardless of, maybe you don't buy your own groceries. Maybe you don't make your own meals. Maybe you don't drive your own car, whatever. The fact that you're not filling your gas tank at $100 a pop
Yeah.
every week, regardless of why you don't know, the fact that you're not struggling like I'm struggling makes me not trust you.
Yeah.
But one thing that even I guess um, against Trump, like you're talking about the speech that he gave and all that, it bothers me that none of them write their own speeches and they're all just reading what somebody else told them to say. And in that regard, Yeah, it's like if your speechwriter told you that, well, especially with Biden just reading the teleprompter, if your speechwriter tells you that the economy is better than it's ever been, and you're just reading what's in front of you, and I'm going to work with liberals and Republicans and conservatives, and I'm going to do this, like it's frustrating to me to hear that and assume that he doesn't mean any of that.
No.
And hopefully he does, but chances are good that's a speechwriter somewhere that wrote that, that knows they've done their market research and they know what people are talking about, what people want to hear. And so they speak to that, which is just the nature of politics, right? Like that's just the nature of politics, to just lots of
Yes.
fluff, whatever people want to hear so you can get elected. Whether
Yeah,
that's
that's the thing about politicians, and on every level, from like from your county sheriff or from your school board or whatever
yeah,
elected position it is, up to the president, they might have good intentions, and I believe a lot of them do. Actually, I believe most of them have good intentions. At least at some point, at the beginning of their career, they thought they were going to change the world or do whatever for good. But they are just going to say whatever they think you want to hear
mm-hmm.
to make them keep their position or get their position.
Yeah, which I think really goes to, at the very least, term limits for Congress and the House of Representatives. But I don't know. I mean, maybe we need to go to one term presidential candidates. I don't know. But the fact that people are trying to stay in power, I feel like is what leads to that.
Yes. Well, yeah, it needs to be totally incentivized. Maybe even, or like, they shouldn't be paid.
Yeah, or you mean like unable to get, like, from other people, from outside interests, or
Oh,
what do you mean by?
definitely. Like, political donations is a weird thing. Well, especially since the Supreme Court, and this wasn't too long ago, 2009, 2010, the Supreme Court said that businesses or corporations are free to
Yeah,
basically have the same rights as individuals,
yeah,
and they can donate just as much, or whatever they want to their heart's content.
yeah,
At that point, our political system was captured. Like, at that
yes,
point, I can't compete with Raytheon.
yeah,
you know I want Bobby Kennedy to get elected, but he's out here asking for $5 and $10 at a pop, because Raytheon's not going to donate to him like they are to Biden and Trump probably.
yeah,
But what I mean is, like, a lot of these, I know senators, I think it's just one term or it might be two terms, they get paid for life. Like, after they serve one, it might, I want to say it's just one term, whatever. I can check that or not, but it's like one or two terms, they get paid for life. Like, man, it's a pretty sweet gig to get for, whatever your salary is the rest of your life after doing it for just 4 years.
yeah, yeah.
And
There,
if you can get inside information, let's say your husband's a stockbroker, your wife's is a stockbroker, and you control the policies that govern these companies,
how is that? How is that not illegal?
it's
How have we not addressed that?
well, and that is a bipartisan issue. Blue and red do that.
Yeah,
They all do it.
yeah,
They're getting money from lobbyists. Yeah, lobbyists should be illegal. Um, Corporations should not be able to make political donations, and there should be, I think, one term limit. So if those things happened, sure, maybe you can get paid. But especially with all the other stuff, it just seems, and I think it's pretty easy to make the conclusion that it's 100% driven by greed,
yeah,
especially when they get out and get these cozy positions and get paid millions of dollars to speak, and you don't have to show, or like, it's unrecorded events, and you don't have to give your transcript of the speech that you made at these companies. That was a Hillary Clinton thing. She went and spoke at this meeting of financiers, of bankers, like Bank of America, and all these people were coming together, and it was a closed event, and they didn't record it or anything, and they asked her for her transcript. That's what Trump was asking, that when he was running against her. He was like, "Hey, can you show what you said at that event?" She's like, "No, it's irrelevant, blah 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 blah." Like, hey, chick, you're hiding something.
Well, even the fact that he asked that question, he must have known something,
Well,
or
he knew a lot of people in that room.
yeah. The problem though is that in order to make something like that happen, you got to get the politicians involved, and none of them are going to want, or at least not enough of them are going to want to cut their legs out from under him. And so even though it's common sense, and I think that for people like you and I, it's like a no-brainer. I don't know that it's going to ever happen, which is really frustrating.
Right.
So, bringing it back a little bit, I wanted to talk to you about this, and I know that maybe both of us have changed our initial perspective. I don't know. Man, you're talking about the 20-year-old, the assassination attempt.
Yeah.
My first thought, my gut thought was this thing has to be an inside job. There's no way that this happens. But I've heard some more reasonable, I think, voices, and I've considered some different things, and I think now I'm landing on terrible communication,
Yeah.
just ineptness, and kind of bad luck. But that really falls back to the ineptness. Like I don't know how you don't handle that before it becomes an issue. But what are your thoughts currently? Do you think that it was? Do you think that it was just a kid that lost his way, he was acting by himself, or do you think he had help, or what?
Well, I don't know about that because oh God. Yes, you can have a popsicle. Please don't knock on my door. You, um, I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling about this guy because he was definitely been manipulated, but when I say he's been manipulated, I mean just by the media. We've had 8 years or more of people saying that Trump is the biggest threat to democracy, that the world, people literally been calling him Hitler, they've been
Yeah,
calling him a fascist. They've been saying that he's the biggest threat.
yeah,
And if you have, especially if you're a developing mind, like if I tell Cash there's a boogeyman right outside of our door, and let's say he found a bat and was like, I'm gonna go beat up the boogeyman.
yeah,
If I don't stop him from beating up the boogeyman, he's gonna go try to beat up that boogeyman. That's
yeah.
what my kid would do. I think that's what happened to this kid. I think that he has just been indoctrinated over years. He was involved with BlackRock, which is maybe a satanic organization. Not that I'm saying they draw pentagrams and worship the devil, but they try to make as much money as they possibly can, and it seems like they don't worry about burning the world down
What
to
what
do
is
it.
that? What is that? Because I heard that he was involved with them, but I don't know what it is.
So there's three big companies that own, like the three of them together own 90% of the US economy, and it's BlackRock. Bobby Kennedy talks about them all a lot. I can't remember the other two, but BlackRock's the biggest one.
Okay,
And those three actually own each other also. And
okay,
so the CEO of BlackRock is the CEO of the US economy. He's probably the most powerful man in the world. And this kid was in commercials involving BlackRock. He has just been manipulated, it seems like, over these years to go on this wayward path. I don't know. The jury's still out on him. My heart breaks for him because he's dead.
yeah,
And even though he did try to kill, like, it's not great. We saw shootings, law enforcement shootings when we were in the service. And so, like, even when the shooter is down, like, I didn't think of this time in Oakland and whatever, might cut out that word, but there was a shooter and it was the middle of the rain. There was like 5 cops. I wasn't there, but everyone that I worked with on third shift was. And there was a guy who was crazy and running around his house, like outside of his house in the middle of the night with a gun, like obviously having a mental breakdown, turned and saw the cops and started to raise his gun. And they just unloaded on him right?
Yeah.
That's a tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad those cops are safe, but that breaks my heart.
Even though it's justified,
Yeah.
it's still a tragedy. Yeah, I hear you.
Um, but when it comes to inside job, man, never. I heard this recently, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but never contribute to malice what can be contributed to ineptitude.
Yeah.
What can be contributed to just doing a shitty job, and the Secret Service was doing a shitty job there.
Did you see the videos of like the agents trying to holster their gun and even unholstering it like it was the first time they'd ever drawn it? That was
Yeah,
weird.
and short females that were visibly out of shape, not tall enough. Like you got to be able to protect the person, carry the person that you're supposed to be protecting.
You would
You
think
got to
that
be
would
able to physically move them.
you would think that would be a prerequisite for that job.
Yeah. But it seems like they're so woke, and these DEI hires, like these diversity hires, they're so woke and they want to paint such a diversity picture. And I've heard there's more to this story too. I heard Joe Biden's wife was in Pennsylvania or around there in that area at the time. And so her security detail pulled some folks off of Trump's security detail. And so Homeland Security had to just like throw some bodies in those positions. I've heard that. I don't know how true that is or how valid it is, but it kind of makes sense because
Yeah.
I can see that happening. Um I I just think they dropped the ball. And
Yeah.
I know enough of like there was people in high school, people in my high school. I joined the Navy and I came back like after my first deployment, and people in my high school asked me, they're like, I heard that the Navy smuggles in cocaine. Is that true? I'm like, huh? And they're like, yeah, how else does all this cocaine get here? Think about it. I'm like, I don't know, but it wasn't on my ship. And
Yeah.
you know, not to anybody else. I don't think the Navy is obviously was not smuggling in that cocaine as much as it was there. We just could not combat the amount of cocaine that was coming into the country, which is
Yeah.
obviously still the case.
Yeah. I think maybe the other thing is that when you and I were cops, the reason more cops don't get killed is not because we're doing a great job of situational awareness or because we've got great tactics. It's because people just don't want to do it, or at least
Yeah.
they don't take the step to do it. Because if you think about it, and I used to think about this all the time, which is probably one of the reasons I am such a mess right now, is like you're at a stoplight or you're
We
going
had
to
to think about it all the time.
you're I still like when I'm using the urinal at Quick Trip, will watch the reflection and the like the the automatic flusher or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be so easy to ambush and kill as many cops as you want as like every day. And so I think maybe the same thing happens here where we feel like, well, the reason it hasn't happened yet is because they've got such great security and they've got such great tactics. And it may just be that everybody else assumes that. And so people think you can't or whatever. Um, I don't know. I guess I'm now leaning more toward, like we had talked about, ineptitude, terrible planning, terrible communication. The one thing that just really bugs me are the videos that I've seen of people pointing and saying, "There's a guy up there with a gun," and presumably no response. Like I'm not hearing a response. I don't know who he's talking to. The stories I've heard are that they were alerting law enforcement. Um, And so I don't know how that doesn't get relayed to the people on that tower or how that doesn't get relayed to the people on the stage. Hey, you might want to take the president, that seems like one of the biggest issues. One, that they didn't already have it secured, but two, that this dude just like you wouldn't be able to do that at a local event.
No.
You wouldn't be able to do that at Riverfest, let alone let alone when the president's 150
Well,
yards away.
think what would happen if someone parked up at the sheriff's office or at the parking garage at the sheriff's office and got out on the top floor and had a rifle. I mean, from the people at the courthouse, and I know because I was one of them. Every time you're in a waiting room at the courthouse, you always look out and you're just looking around.
Yeah.
You'd see someone there. The people walking back and forth, people using that parking garage, within minutes, that guy would have cops on him, guns drawn.
Yeah.
Um, maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but yeah, it was just a big failure. It was a colossal security failure, and one that, but by the grace of God, and man, that's easy to laugh at. Like God's hand missed that bullet.
Nope, nope,
But
nope, not this guy. That
yeah,
one.
man, yeah, that is weird. So Trump started off his speech. He was maybe a minute into it, but I saw that his Trump's people were on IG already saying, "Watch the Trump speech, watch the Trump speech." So I immediately went to YouTube, and it was on YouTube Live. Watch the Trump speech. When I got on there, they had that fire chief, the guy who took the bullet. They had his
Oh, yeah.
coat on a rack, and they had his helmet there, and walked. Trump, Trump walked up, and the crowd's cheering. They're like, he put his hand over this hanger that's holding this fire chief's jacket, and kissed the helmet on the helmet, patted it. Thank you, thank you, and the crowd's going, yeah, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. There, it is a miracle. Like, what are the odds? What
Have
are
you
the odds
have you
that
seen the illustration or the I guess the computerized version, the breakdown of how, like, what happened and how that would have been a direct hit, like if he
of
hadn't
course,
turned his head? Isn't that wild?
yeah,
Now here's one more question before we maybe move on to something else.
yeah.
Um, that seems like that would be a difficult shot.
No,
You don't
it's
think?
like 130 yards.
Well, he was elevated 100,
My kid,
150, 148.
yeah,
What
my
kind
kid
of,
could make that shot.
you think so?
Yeah,
Did he
in a
have
in a
optics
prone
or?
in a prone position. Yeah, I mean, even with iron sights, but I believe he did. I know I heard he had a PSA, Palmetto State Armory, which is just fine, by the way. A lot of like gun guys like to poo poo on PSA. They are just fine, but it is a budget brand. They're
Yeah.
like, I don't know,
Is it the
like what
high
GM.
point?
No, it's better than a High Point.
Okay.
But what they do really well is they reproduce a lot of proven gun designs. Like they make a lot of 1911s, a lot of like copycat Glocks. They make a lot of AR-15s, and it's like, yeah, it's just a cheap version of all the cool guns that you see. It's just, maybe their machining isn't as tight, maybe it's not the best material, maybe it's not all the Gucci stuff, but it's just fine.
Yeah.
He used a Palmetto State Armory AR-15 5.56. I thought it sounded like 5.56 as soon as I heard it. I thought it sounded suppressed, but they said it wasn't suppressed. So I
Yeah.
mean, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, obviously I'm displaying the fact that I don't know, I'm not a gun guy, but you wouldn't have to account for trajectory or windage or elevation or anything at that distance.
I mean, minor adjustments, but like, yeah, I mean, at 100, yeah, I mean, not bad at all. Every Marine, or used to, I think they still do, just now they have red dots, but every Marine qualifies at 500 yards with that same exact rifle, with a nicer version of that same exact rifle, of an AR-15 and 5.56. Marines qualify, they used to qualify with iron sights, and when I was in the military, they were qualifying with iron sights. So I mean, just like two in the back, one in the front, and they line that sucker up and send it.
Hmm.
And they learn how to, you can make adjustments, or you can do it by just raising it. He brought a rangefinder with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was pictures, like I had heard, or I've read now, that Secret Service was watching him. Like they saw a suspicious man with a backpack and a rangefinder. He probably had the AR broken down in his backpack. They
Yeah.
said he laid the ladder there the day before. Yeah,
And,
if
hey, is this your ladder? Did anybody put a ladder on this building? Nah, it probably belongs there. Don't worry about it.
but yeah, in a good prone position, if you just shoot straight, like if Donald Trump had stayed still, even from a front profile would have been real easy, but a side profile, he wouldn't even have had to make any adjustments to his optic. It just would have went a little bit lower.
Yeah.
But if he would have sighted in his rifle at 100 yards or even at 50 yards, but you're supposed to sight it in at 100 yards. If he would have sighted in his rifle, it would have been right smack on him. Except, like I said, it would have dropped a little bit. So,
Now,
like if he put the red dot right here, it would have hit like right here.
yeah.
But I assume he did make adjustments because it was perfect. It was perfect elevation. If Donald, because let's say that the sight was right here on his ear. Whenever he turned like this is when he pulled the trigger. So he actually had a pretty good sight picture.
Yeah.
I think he just got panicked and slapped the trigger. But even
So,
like, yeah.
but you're a different. I mean, you're obviously a different. You got a different level of experience. Even I have a different level of experience than your average 20-year-old. Is there any indication that he was military, or like, doesn't it seem like to be able to make that shot? I know it's easy for you. You said your son could do it. Do you think
Yeah,
you
that's
think the
true.
average person could do it?
With minimal training, they could teach themselves how to do it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like if you really got into YouTube and you start following the people, and I follow, I call it GunTube, and a lot of people call it GunTube. Like all the shooters on podcasts, I'm thinking of like Mike Glover or Hitchcock, or all. There's a lot of information on YouTube, GBRS, a lot of legit sources of information. You can spend an hour on YouTube and learn how to sight in your rifle, learn how trigger control, learn sight picture, sight alignment, and you could pull that shot off. You'd have to actually do it. I mean, it would take some practice. You'd have to go to the range. You'd have to sight in your rifle. You'd have to learn how to actually squeeze a trigger instead of slapping it. But like I said, my son shot a steel plate at 100 yards with a 22 rifle.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, I guess even if you're just a hunter, like you would have practiced those things,
A
and
hunter a hunter could definitely make that shot.
yeah.
100%.
Hmm.
Um
Well,
yeah.
I can't imagine the fallout if he had actually killed him.
He had a remote detonator with him. He had he had explosives in his car, and they said he had explosives in his house. He had a remote detonator with him. I think what he was trying to do was what we would call a complex attack. Um, more than one phase of an attack is a complex attack. So like if I shoot you, right? And then everyone's chaos. I see everyone turn their guns on me. I hide behind this beam and hit my detonator. Then all of a sudden, boom, a car explodes in the background. People are going to be trampled to death.
Yeah.
There's going to be body parts in the parking lot. He could easily slip away. If he had done that, it was, I think it was like less than 2 seconds. I have to go back and look at it, but it was pretty quick. The Secret Service, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4. The Secret Service was the last shot, or it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think is what it was. The kid got plugged, but it was pretty quick reaction from the Secret Service. He could have done more if he was well trained and current, like an 18-year-old kid through Marine Corps School of Infantry could have fucked that place up. Could
Yeah.
have like made some improvised explosives and probably not miss that shot. And maybe
It just blows my mind, man, because I just really thought that there was more That I would have thought that it would be impossible, because in my mind I was like, well, surely somebody would have tried this before because of how much people hate the guy. But maybe it's just, maybe there's not as many people willing to take that ride.
Yeah, it's a testament to how controlled people are. I've heard this about gun statistics a lot. And by the way, Biden said bullets are the number one killer of kids in the US during that debate. You have to be just ignorant of the world to say something like that. Swimming pools kill more kids than guns. Car accidents are the number one killer. Sugar kills more kids. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a miracle it's not as bad. Oh, what I was going to say about guns, for the amount of guns that are out on the street, if Americans were as crazy as the news made us seem, if it was really people are hating, you know, based on race and all this stuff, if there really was as much violence in the world, there would be there would be shootings every day. There would be mass shootings every day. Like if all the MAGA people were as violent and extreme as the news makes us seem, for the amount of guns, I mean, think about all the guns that were on people when we were when we were on the beat.
Yeah. Well, it's the same. Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that the reason more things like that don't happen is because there just aren't that many people willing or wanting to do it.
Yeah. The world isn't. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing because I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I want to say that the world is a crazy, sad place, and it is, but also the world isn't as bad as the news makes it seem, because if it was, this would have happened to every president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Changing gears a little bit, did you listen to that Joe Rogan podcast that I sent you? Well, I didn't send it to you. I mentioned it on one of
Sebastian Younger, the latest.
Yeah, dude, have you listened to that?
I did, but I don't remember the part that you're talking about. Like the first, was it minute and a half that you said?
No, it was an hour 30.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yeah, dude, I've listened to that episode twice now, and I actually want to listen a third time, because first off, some of the things that Joe Rogan said were like exactly what I've been trying to explain, or explain's not the right word. Like those are the words that I've been trying to put on my thoughts, or put to my thoughts. Like I really think he nailed a couple things there. But it's also, I don't know, it's dude, this thing is not. It was really intriguing to me, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, depending on how far you made it.
Well, what was I listened to the whole thing, but only just once.
Uh,
The big takeaway I had was Sebastian Younger was, I don't know how. I mean, I guess I see the leap that he made. I don't know how he still calls himself an atheist if he saw his dead dad and he believes in an afterlife. Like he pretty much said he believes in an afterlife. And
Yeah.
he said he thinks that he's seen dead people. How do you still call yourself an atheist on that?
Well, I think what it is really, I think we talked about it last week. One of my problems with the way that there's evidence of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, okay, but what are we calling God? And so like when Rogan's talking about this connected consciousness or this source, and he says, well, if that's what we're talking about, then yeah, I believe in that. And so I think that, for a lot of people that call themselves agnostic or atheists, I think what they're saying is they just can't get behind this concept of Father Time in the sky watching and like making judgments, and like it
Yeah, I sympathize with that.
Yeah, like, and so and I kind of felt like if I were him, I would have been a little bit annoyed at the assumption that Joe Rogan was making about, well, you're not an atheist, you're an agnostic. He said that several times. And I would have been like, look, motherfucker, I know the difference. And I'm telling you, I'm this. But even with that, like he still once he kind of broke it down, like, you know, a source or a connection or a consciousness, at that point, uh, Sebastian was like, yeah, I can get behind that. I don't know.
Yeah,
The whole thing was just fascinating to me. Like it was just
it definitely seems like what people really reject is the notion of God that society, like the picture of God that society has painted. That's what they reject.
yes.
And I reject that too, by the
Yeah,
way. I think
same.
God is bigger than that. What so much more than that. Um so yeah, it's just weird. It's, you know, it goes back to what we were talking about, like what words mean. Like words can really trip people up, because I can see how, I mean, I can follow the logic, I guess, on how you can call yourself an atheist and still believe in all this supernatural thing, all these supernatural things. But it doesn't make sense to my mind because of the world that I come from, because of my idea of theology, and even where I am now. I'm like, oh, you're talking about God, homie. Like when you're talking about the universe and you're talking about life and fate, like you're talking about the same thing. But not everybody has that interpretation of God. And maybe even most people don't. Most people don't have that idea of God, but that's where I am.
Yeah. Um, so I tried to show, well, I did. I showed a clip of it to my wife, and you know, anytime I bring her into these conversations, I never want to make it sound like I'm somehow over her, that she just didn't get it or whatever, but she just didn't get it. Like she's just like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't compute. And it's no slight on her.
Yeah.
But one of the things that she said that was interesting is, like, I think that it bothers her to, if you no longer believe in the God of the Bible, well, what are the rules? And what will you do and not do? And it can be a scary thing for somebody to, like, if you see God as the ultimate rule giver, and now you remove that version of God, then it's kind of like what they were talking about in the podcast, that, well, then where do the rules come from? Where's morality come from? And I thought that he made a really good point that, you know, like, I wouldn't rob banks even if it was legal. I'm not going to
Yeah.
steal my neighbor's car just because there's no punishment for it. Like, there are still things that you don't do just because you love people, or because you love this person, or because, you know, you don't want to cause harm. Like, there's still reasons to uh, have morality, even if you don't have a fear of hell or a fear of God in that sense. I do think that whatever God is, I do think that there are natural responses, natural results, there karma, maybe you call it karma. Like, bad behavior still gets bad results, whether it's because of a personality, like God being a personality, or because it's just the nature of whatever God is, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I see how people think that. If there's not a God, then where do these rules come from? Because most of these people since birth and for, you know, hundreds of years in their family tradition have had this tradition that all rules come from God. You know, like I I hear people say this now about the US, and I don't know if it's true, but they say, well, all laws are basically based on the 10 commandments. I've even said that. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's true. As much as it is, I think what the Greeks would call natural law, or what I'm considering, and obviously I didn't come up with this, but I think it's the divine inside of you. Or like I've heard people describe the Holy Ghost as like your conscious, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the divine inside of you. I think that makes sense. Like we all know it's bad to kill. We all know it's bad to steal. We all know it's bad to lie. We all know that coveting is not healthy for you or any situation. We all know that lust and adultery, like we know this is like low vibrational things. I don't need a book to tell me, but it helps whenever it's all written down. But those are only 5 of the 10 commandments. The first 5 is just about God and about you shouldn't have any graven images. You have no gods before me.
Yeah. Well, doesn't it make a lot of sense too to look at it like to reverse the order, that perhaps these biblical mandates came as a result of, you know, leaders politically or military, otherwise, whatever, saying, hey, we need to make a rule about stealing from your neighbor because this isn't good for society. So yeah, this is what God says. God says not to do this because, you know, because it's bad for society. That makes more sense to me than society saying, well, God said it, so it's going to be our law too.
Data Over Dogma had a really good episode on the 10 Commandments recently. I don't know if you're still listening to them, but
No, well, funny you mentioned it. I listened to the very first one yesterday
Oh, really?
again, for like the 5th time. But
That's a good one.
I haven't listened for a while.
So the 10 Commandments is not in the Bible, like where it says the 10 Commandments. It's really the 613
You're
Commandments.
right.
And yeah, it's so funny that we get hung up on this 10. This is my big beef. I've been having this conversation in my head a lot lately with like people, spiritual people from my past that have really just about the theology and like these weird rules that they take from the Old Testament and put onto to us in 2024. My big thing is that book wasn't written for us. That was written by Jews for Jews 2,500 years ago.
Right.
That Old Testament. That book's not for us. Jesus even says as much, kind of, but Paul definitely said, like when he was talking to the Corinthians, he was like, if you guys want to take on the Old Testament law and get circumcised, you can do that. But just so you know, you don't have to. You're under the new covenant with Christ. That Old Testament, the Jewish law does not apply to you because you're not Jews, is what Paul said.
Yeah.
The 613 rules, we don't follow them all. We eat shellfish, we eat pork, we shave our face on the side, we let our wives in the house when they're on their period. Like all these weird rules, besides the ones that make sense. And I think the ones that make sense is the ones that Jesus was talking about, you know, whatever, is the ones that we should actually care about. And it's the ones that actually transcend religion. These rules, like don't murder, don't steal, don't, you know, all the religions say that. And it's written on our heart. We know that we're not supposed to do those things. Shellfish, I don't care about.
Yeah.
When I shave my face on the side, I don't care about. Like saying God's name in vain, how that was written and in the context that was written does not mean you can't say God and not be talking to God. It means
Yeah.
you shouldn't make an oath. Well, you shouldn't make a covenant under God if you don't plan on keeping it.
Yeah.
And you don't break an oath, especially one that you've said in the name of El Yon or Yahweh and not keep it.
Yeah.
That's a sin.
That was another this was a Facebook post that I'd seen where someone was talking about the harm, or basically how bad it was to take God's name in vain. And I was just like, but which God?
Yeah.
Like, who are we talking about? And are we talking about, so when I say,
And what do you mean by taking it in vain?
well, so this particular post I think was way off base, but it was talking about, you know, using the name as a swear word, God damn it, or God whatever. But I'm like, that's not his name. Even if you want to say that that's what that means, right? Like, don't take the Lord's name in vain. God isn't his name. That's
No.
a category. So if you
Yeah.
want to say don't take the Lord's name in vain, and if you want to make that a big deal, well, then we probably ought to be talking about Adonai or Yahweh or whatever personal name you want to give him. That's his name, not his role. And so it's just like, And it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever, you can believe what you want, but it's just like, it would be so much more compelling if you would just take just a second to think about it, to really think about like what we're talking about.
Yeah, so I'll say it, even though I think I just said it a few minutes ago, but GD used to make my skin crawl. I used to think that was like, don't ever say that. My wife just came up. But GD, if you break it down, especially what damn it means,
Yeah.
like damn this thing, that's a prayer.
Yeah.
Whenever
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
say that, you're like, God, I want you to damn that thing to hell. And God, I want you to damn that person. God, I want you to damn this thing. I want you to give it damnation.
Yeah.
God damn it. Damn that flashlight. It's a
Right.
prayer. Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah. Whatever this thing is that I'm working on that's not working.
Yeah, it really comes from you're letting other people do your thinking for you. Or you've kind of, over your I say that and it sounds kind of meaner than how I mean it, is you're conditioned to just accept things as you've been told. And so like, oh, they told me the 10 commandments is the final basis of the law. I guess that is the foundation of the law. And like I said, just that, if you think about God damn that, God damn this bottle of hand sanitizer, that's a prayer. I'm not saying his name in vain. What's really saying his name in vain, I guess there's a bunch of things, but I mean, what would it be if I say, if I'm just talking loosely, or maybe if I'm even making fun of, but even that is childish and not sincere. And I don't think it's a reflection of the heart.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that I tried to float to my wife is I've for a while, we've talked about this, wondered if Satan, or our concept of Satan, is not just a part of our psyche, just our shadow self, or whatever that part of us that makes us, that tempts us to do things that are against our standards. We have to have a way to explain that. And so the
Yeah.
way we explain that is by saying that there's a tempter, there's a deceiver, there's an enemy. And I'm good with that. I wonder if God is not the same, only different. Like and I think this is one of the things Joe Rogan was talking about, that something animates me. I've got a spirit, I've got a soul. I don't know where it is. I don't know what it is. I can't measure it. I just know that it's there. And I know that when somebody dies, it's no longer
It's
there.
not them.
So maybe that animating force is God, and sin is when we do things that are against our conscience. So like you mentioned, in Christianity, we would call it the Holy Spirit. Outside of that, we would call it your conscience. And like think about things that even from an evangelical perspective, there are things that you do that you don't think are sin, where
Right.
somebody else would. And
Yes.
what is that? It's your conscience. If it violates your conscience, then you feel guilt and you feel sin. You feel as though you've sinned. And so now you need to deal with that. But if you haven't, picture a little kid running around naked. Like they're just whatever, like they have no shame. But then at some point they get shame. And now when they do that, they feel guilt or they feel growth, that whatever, they're aware of it.
And that shame was probably put on them by someone else.
Sure. And yeah, perfect. That's exactly right. And so now when after somebody has caused you to feel shame about whatever it is, smoking, drinking, whatever petty, like we can come up with better examples, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now you feel this and we call it sin, but nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is now it goes against your standards.
Yeah. So like smoking. Smoking's a good one because I don't think that if you smoke a cigarette, God is gonna put a tally up on the board like, oh, look at there. There's another one.
Yeah.
That he's got to ask for forgiveness or that's gonna send him to hell. I don't think smoking is a sin like that. But I have been a user of some form of tobacco since I was about 13, really since I was 18. Um, and I'm trying to run. I'm trying to increase my running. It just doesn't make sense for me to keep on smoking.
Yeah.
It's not going to help my running out at all. I'm actively trying to quit. I think I pretty much got it licked, but I'm down to like 2 a day, 1 or 2 a day, maybe sometimes 5, but never more than that. Every time I smoke a cigarette, and I think it's for a good reason, I know I'm like, dude, you're not doing yourself any favors for this. Your kids see this, and you could possibly be giving them this habit, because I know that's where I got it from.
Yeah.
I saw my brother do it. And so that's why and my cousin, and that's why I did it, because I thought they looked cool. I'm like, you could be giving your kids this bad habit. B, you could be literally giving yourself lung cancer. Like, that is a possibility. I don't think, just one will tip you over or whatever. Uh, you're not helping your run. You're not helping your health. It's just not a good thing. And that way, it hurts my spirit. Like, when I think about it like that, it is like a smudge against my soul every time. But that's from me. And it could be the divine in me. It could be the Holy Spirit. Something I was gonna say, two things. I like the picture of what you're talking about, like how the shadow self is in all of us and in our psyche. Jung talked about that a lot too. I was listening to Jung when I was running today, Carl Jung. Um, God, the universe, consciousness, like I think how I'm thinking of God right now, this big, indescribable, unexplainable thing that's in all of us, um, fits that the same exact way as the shadow self. And I think we can even expand on the shadow self too, because just how there's like a collective consciousness is what Carl Jung would call it. And maybe that's where inspiration comes from. And that's where all these social changes, the shadow self could morph into a bigger thing also, because thing about like greed or lust, like, yes, that greed and lust is in me, but it's also in the world,
Yeah.
and in that world feeds me. I know that because every time I open up my cell phone, I have to be conscious. When it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep, I have to be conscious to control myself, because there is lust and there's greed and all these bad things in
Yeah.
the world also, and it's coming to me. That shadow is in me, and it's also in the world. um the Hindus think about it, I think, like Atman. Hinduism's so cool because they actually think it's all God. Like, it's all God.
Dude, I'm nervous to say this because it would be a real problem for most of my friends. But man, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me that the shadow, as bad as it is, it's necessary and it's a part of the whole picture. It's
Yeah.
part of God. I interrupted you. You were saying that you can make it even more than just the shadow self. Is that what you is that did you say what you meant to say or what you were going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna ramble on. Like, Young talked about it with collective consciousness. um I was listening to this book today when I was running. It's only like 2.5 hours. Oh shucks, what was the name of it? Doesn't matter. um The Undiscovered Self by Carl Jung. And it's really good. He talks about the difference between religion and creed in there, and what most people call religion. And he was talking about the Church of England, but we could call it the Baptist Church or the Church of God or whatever, is really a creed. And we're talking about like morals and standards that come from your family and come from your upbringing. And like, hey, this is what we do. We go to church on Sundays. We say the Lord's Prayer. We say grace. We don't steal. We don't kill, because God is in our heart. You know, Sunday school Christianity, he described that more as a creed. Like, you know, yeah, that would be a creed, as far as like, this is what my family believes. And I actually like that.
Yeah.
I even like to think of Christianity like my family, we go to church on Sunday, we have crosses, we pray to Jesus, We like this because this is what we do. That is a creed. A religion, and even and I think we have too, have like demonized the word religion. And but what he was saying is like true religion is actually a relationship. Like it's who you talk to in your heart. It is it's who you develop a relationship with. Like me and God have gone through a lot together, and my relationship is a lot different than it was 5 years ago. It's, night and day different than it was 20 years ago. That's what Carl Jung would call religion. And he said that's separate than your creed, than your going to church on Sunday and taking communion and doing the singing the hymns and doing the thing.
So, so would he say the creed is like what you hope to attain, and religion is what you're actually living out?
I don't know. I think what he was doing was just um drawing a line between the two and pointing out the difference as far as, yeah, creed is, I think he was saying creed is more superficial. Creed is
Okay.
creed is surface level.
Okay.
It's me putting on the shirt of this is John 3:16, and
Yeah.
what, having my Bible carrier and going to school. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Yeah.
that's creed.
The irony is, at least for as long as I can remember, it seems like that's where we put the most focus on,
Yeah, of
is
course.
the things that you say you believe, and the things that you the picture that you show, as opposed to what you actually do, what you actually live.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think it comes down to being conscious in the relationship, like taking an active role in the relationship, and being honest in the relationship. And I'm talking about relationship with your light self and maybe even your shadow self. Like like with smoking cigarettes. I want to go out and smoke a cigarette just because it feels good.
Mhm.
But when I stop and think, "Hey dude, you could be hurting yourself. You could definitely be hurting your family by giving this impression." When I take that active role in, or that conscious observation, that mindful look at myself, then it becomes a sin to me
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
because it's crossed that line from creed. The creed version of that sin would be, God, your body's a temple and God doesn't want you to do it. And look, it says here in the Old and New Testament, your body's a temple of God. You can't hurt yourself. That's why you can't get tattoos. you know, that's the creed version. It crosses that whenever I take the conscious role, whenever I get into the driver's seat of specifically on that is my relationship with God in me.
Yeah. The term relationship, um, right now and recently, has kind of bothered me,
Okay.
because we always talk about it's a relationship, not a religion, and all this kind of stuff. And
Right.
that's the sort of thing that, um, well-meaning people will say, "I'm not inviting you to religion. I want you to experience a relationship." And we say that, right? Like that's very common. But what do we actually mean by that? Like, are we just talking about, like, if we went to pick any whatever church down the street, and we go interview the whoever youth pastor or some of the members, they're going to say, "I have a relationship with Christ." Okay, tell me about that.
Mm-hmm.
And really, what it probably is it's a relationship with your mind. And like when we pray and we feel like it's not even escaping the ceiling, maybe it doesn't have to, because God is within us and God is part of our psyche. And that doesn't mean he's less real, or I'm not even saying he, because it's not a gender, it's not a
Yeah.
person, it's not a, I don't even know if it's a personality. But so I can understand that when we say, yeah, I've got a relationship with the light, with my light self. I've got a relationship with my dark self. I've got a relationship, but it's not a, Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just frustrates me that we talk about this personal relationship, but it's not like any other personal relationship that you wouldn't describe. Um, oh, I don't know that I'm explaining it well. Does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
No, that makes sense. And I think, yeah, like you can go down that rabbit hole so far, or at least like my personal thing is I think I took that literal. Like when people said, I don't want you to have a religion, I want you to have a relationship with Christ.
I think they
I
meant it literal.
well, I took that literal into the fact where like, okay, I'm going to ask God some hard questions and I want his answer. And, I'm saying, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm saying his. I'm going to ask God, why did you tell the children of Israel to commit genocide? And then I'm going to wait for an answer. And the answer that came to me, it was like, A, that probably never happened to begin with. But B, if it did happen, is because that's not the same God that I'm talking to.
Mm,
Like my God in my head is a perfect, my God in my heart is, it's actually way more than this now. But the God that I was praying to when I said, God, why was it okay for David to have hundreds of wives, but I'm supposed to only have one? Why was it okay for Moses to kill 2/3 of the children of Israel after he had just got them out of Egypt? Why why is that okay? And it's because that's not the same God that I'm talking to.
yeah.
Like I said, I don't think any of those things really happened. But even if it did, it's because we're talking about two different things. And so my relationship that I had was asking God hard questions because I wanted it to be real. I didn't want it to be surface level. And that's the thing that was really causing me depression and anxiety sometimes because I was trying to hold on to the theology of my mom and my grandma and these what I said I believed, what I told you I believed, the C.S. Lewis version of Christianity that I was probably at when I was on patrol.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to hold on to that, and I was good at talking about that God, and so I wanted to hold on to it, but I couldn't reconcile it with these questions that I had in my heart about like how come I pray and I fast and I still get lied to and taken advantage of. Like you said, ask and the door will be open. Knock and the door will be open. Ask and it'll be given to you. Well, God, I've asked you a lot and I've done all the things. How come? Like, oh, maybe it's not on God. Maybe it's on me. And maybe sometimes it's just on the universe, which really is God. Or
Right, right.
maybe sometimes bad things happen. Maybe there's no one steering this ship. Like the Secret Service, maybe no one's in control. And the reason it hasn't fallen out to pieces to begin with is because we are good in general. Or, we don't want to kill everyone. Maybe that's why the world hasn't fallen to pieces because there's been decent leadership. Maybe parents have done an okay job. Maybe we are trying to progress. Maybe it's not a divine hand like the Sunday school golden hand, golden invisible hand from the sky. Maybe it's our heart and our collective consciousness that's making these progressions.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the bigger picture of God. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know, but that to me, at least currently, that makes a lot more sense than the Sunday school answers.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you listen to that podcast I sent you of that guy basically writing a he was basically doting. He was this Hindu dude and he was speaking
oh
English,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
he was doting on Kali. Man, I
I,
loved that. It
uh,
pulled my heart apart.
what I didn't do, what I meant to do is listen to it again
Yeah.
because I was at home and there was just some distractions. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed that.
Why I love Hinduism so much, and I hope in the next life I am a Hindu, is because they, at least the version that's been presented to me and the version that I like, this podcast version, he even said multiple times like Kali is a name, and like this vision. Kali is the wife of Shiva. Kali was actually, I can't remember his real name, her real name. Like she went crazy. Kali was Shiva's wife, and she went crazy and became Kali, the goddess of death and the goddess of destruction. And she has her tongue out, and
Yeah.
she's holding up a man's head, and she's holding up a sword, and her other arm is holding up something. And she's just this bad, crazy bitch, and she's burning it all down. And what snapped her out of it is Shiva. Um, Shiva, the male version of Kali, like the god of destruction, would um he disguised himself. She killed all these people, and like she was literally walking on bodies, and he knew is like, if she steps on me, that'll snap her out of it. If she realizes that she stepped on me, that'll bring her out of this rage. And so he disguised himself as a corpse, and she's walking on all these corpses, like just burning the whole motherfucker down. And then she steps on Shiva, and she's like, oh no, I've stepped on my love. I've stepped on my heart. And so that's what snaps her out of it.
Okay.
It like brings her out of King Kong mode. But that is, so what I just described, that crazy bitch, is a version of God. That is a face of God that can, like, you can think of God this way, or you can think of God in the masculine version of that if you want to, and you can think of him as Shiva, or you can think of him as this creator. Like, he's also this creator, and you think, and we call that creator version, we call him Brahman, the Brahman or Brahma, whatever. He's the guy who created it all. Or you can think about this other guy, Vishnu, and he's the protector. He's the servant. He's the white knight on with a shield and a sword, and he's
Hmm.
does everything right, and he toes the line, and he's the good guy. You can think of him like that. All of these versions are, and this guy in the podcast said this, is these are all just faces of the one God,
Yeah.
of the, and like sometimes God is a destroyer, and sometimes the universe kicks you in the nuts, and sometimes your dad's gonna die, and sometimes both your parents die, and sometimes it's unfair.
Hmm.
A lot of times it's unfair. Brother, that's God. It sucks. That's God.
That's the thing. And I think that's the thing that I really appreciate about it is that instead of instead of having to reconcile, well, why would a good God allow bad things to happen to good people? Because that's kind of the ultimate stumbling block for a lot of people. Instead of trying to squeeze these answers into it, they say, well, that's that is an aspect of God. Destruction is a face of God. And I guess maybe you still have the same trouble of trying to reconcile it, but I don't know. It makes sense to me. Not that it's not that there. I don't think that there are necessarily hundreds of deities ruling everything. I really don't. But I do think that it frames it in a way that I can understand it a little bit better. Which
Yeah.
ultimately, I think that's all any of this is about. All
Any
religion,
religion.
it's all about, I think, uh, hey, we live in this place, and there's some kind of power that's coming from somewhere. There's something that's animating us. And when things die, they lose that animation. And it must be a mostly good and benevolent thing because mostly good things happen. Mostly, not always, but
Yep.
sometimes bad things happen. And so this benevolent thing must also have a dark side, or at least like there's something out there, we'll call it evil. Like it lays it out uh, in an attempt to explain it. And I think that's what it's
Yeah.
all about. It's just trying to explain why things are the way they are. And, 10,000 years ago in India, they had this perspective.
Yeah.
And 6,000 years ago in Israel, they had this perspective. And I don't know why I'm just now understanding that. But if we'd had this conversation a year ago, 2 years ago, that I wouldn't even consider it. I'd be like, that's just nonsense.
Yeah. I remember because I was We did have conversations kind of like this, or we're flirting with this a year ago or so, um, or I guess maybe 2 years ago. And I remember you going, "That's a beautiful image, and that's really interesting." But I could tell like it was stopping there. You're like,
Yeah.
"But that's not God, brother." Like, but you're like, "That's very interesting, and that's cool."
Yeah.
Um, are you watching any good shows?
No. Um, I'll tell you, we went to the movies last night. My son and I did. We went to see Twisters.
Oh, really?
Dude, it was fun. It was fun. It was fun hanging out with my son. But I think that I hate Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
Like it was so fucking dumb. So dumb. Like every aspect of it was just like, just shut up. Like everything, like I hated everything about that movie. Um, but what I was gonna say is like they have 30 minutes of previews beforehand,
Yeah.
and every preview I'm like, oh, this looks so dumb. Oh, that looks so dumb.
Oh, really?
Dude, there was one that seemed kind of interesting. It was produced by A24. They make a lot of suspenseful horror type movies, and that looked kind of interesting. But otherwise, it's just so dumb.
Yes, anxiety and horror looks
Yeah,
interesting
yeah,
too.
perfect. It's exactly what I need. Maybe throw in something sad. Um, but
I,
no,
I
I haven't watched anything in a while.
oh, um, do you watch Netflix?
I don't have Netflix anymore.
Oh, why?
Uh,
You just weren't watching it?
well, they raised the price again, and I'm
Yeah,
just so sick of like at the time we had Hulu and Netflix and Prime and all of
Disney.
Discovery and Disney and Paramount and all of these, and I'm paying like $100 a month for all of these different packages, and I can just stream them illegally for free.
Okay.
So
Um, I just finished. I finished it up in 2 days. The latest season of Vikings Valhalla. Were you ever into Vikings?
no, I think I tried one episode, but I didn't. I don't think
Oh,
I even finished the episode.
well, okay. It was pretty good. I finished it up in 2 days. Vikings Valhalla. Um, yeah, nothing too much to talk about. That was the only good thing. I'd like to get rid of Netflix too. Just people in my household watch it. I started yesterday on the fourth season of Chosen. Did you ever watch Chosen?
Dude, I loved the first three seasons. I thought they were fantastic.
Well, you should start the fourth season.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
Ironically, or maybe not ironically, interestingly, I've wondered what I would think about it now with my current thoughts.
That's what I was watching it yesterday. And I was thinking, I'm not, and I didn't want to be combative at it. Like, I didn't want to go into it with the mindset of, like, oh, this is just Western evangelicalism BS. Like, I wanted to get something out of this. And I feel like God can talk to you. I feel like God talks to me through everything and maybe even through these shows. Um, Jesus, and I probably did push it on it, but this Jesus, and I got through like the first 4 episodes, was the Jesus that I'm down with right now.
Okay.
And um, yeah, he was saying everything, especially because I don't even know if we've talked about it on here. I've been really into like Gnosticism and what I think is like the first century church, the true, like I'm some expert, what I think the true meaning of what they were saying back then, like the code,
Hmm.
and before the Romans bastardized it and turned it into this, fist. I, I think that the Jesus in the Chosen was really jiving with this because at one time, um, brothers James and John came up to him as after he changed Peter's name from Simon to Peter. Everyone was jealous of Peter. And so James and John were like, "Hey, can we sit at your right and left hand in your kingdom?" And and Jesus said, "You don't know what you're asking of me." He, uh, like are you willing to drink of are you willing to drink from my cup and, bear the cross that I'm going to bear? And he said, in 3 days, or he goes, when we go to Jerusalem, the Son of Man is going to be crucified and they're going to kill him. And in 3 days, he's going to rise again. It was funny, as in the background, Matthew was like, I thought you were the Son of Man. Oh, because that's what he says. Like, when we go to Jerusalem, the Son of Man is going to be killed. He's going to be killed and they're going to crucify him. And in 3 days, he'll rise again. And, obviously, we see it like, oh, he's prophesizing his death and yada
Yeah.
yada. And no one knew what he was talking about. Everyone was clueless. And afterwards, Jesus walked away crying because he's like, you don't know what you ask of me. And it's like, A, it's not mine to give, it's the Father's to give that position. And B, you don't even know. He walked away. Everyone's like, well, did we get the seat or not? I don't know. I guess we got to go ask him again. I thought it was really cool. He took his disciples to, I can't remember the name of it, but it follows the New Testament. Took his disciples to this place where he asked them, is like, what do people, or who am I? What do you people think that I am? Like, some people think you're Elijah. Some people think that you're Moses. Some people think that you're John the Baptist. Obviously, you're not John the Baptist. And he was like, yeah, but who do you think that I am? And everyone was like, you're wise, you're this, you're that. And Peter was the one who said, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And he was like, that's right. Your body didn't tell you this. Your mind didn't tell you this. That came from outside of you. I'm getting the Holy Spirit now. He was like, that came like, he said, that didn't come from your own mind. That was above you. You said, you're right. I am the Messiah. And basically he called himself the Son of God. Why that fits with the way I'm jiving right now is because, A, I think we're all children of God, which isn't that far of a stretch. But yeah, it was just beautiful. I don't know how to keep on waxing about that.
Is it interesting that that when they said that some people say you're Elijah, some people say you're Moses, some people say you're whoever, that they're talking about reincarnation, and that it's not like, well, it's appointed unto man once to live and then the judgment, or once to die and then the judgment. Like, he doesn't seem to take issue with that concept, just that that's not who he is.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to scare away what few evangelicals that listen to this.
I think they're gone by now.
Yeah. So academically, and like by evidence of like the way they were talking and like even their shrines and things like this, they probably believed in reincarnation. Their idea of the afterlife was not heaven and hell like we have it today, especially the ancient Jews. It seems like they believed in reincarnation, and even they described John the Baptist as Elijah. I sent you, this was a year ago, back when I was, or years ago, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, when I was just flirting with this idea of reincarnation in the Bible. There was this preacher who said, just because they say that the spirit of Elijah was in John the Baptist doesn't mean that John the Baptist was reincarnated Elijah. And I was like, the more he says this, the more I think that he is. So the Bible describes reincarnation. The Bible describes talking to ghosts, and the Bible describes reincarnation. I think it just makes sense, and I think they knew it made sense.
Yeah.
That's the way I talk about it with my kids. I say we go to heaven and we see everybody and we get to spend time with God, and then whenever we're bored there, we come back. And they're like, really? I was like, that's what I think. That's what I believe. I don't, like I said before, I don't tell them what to think. I tell them how to think, or I try to teach them how to think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Something came to mind about the Chosen series. I don't remember what I was thinking, but I maybe I will watch it. I really enjoyed the first 3. Oh, I remember what it was. One of the things that turned me off was in between these seasons, the guy that plays Jesus, the actor, whatever, I keep seeing these ads on Instagram selling like Bibles or something like that. And I'm just like, come on, man. Like
You just try.
clearly like he's not in these ads, he's not Jesus, but
No.
you know who he is. And it's like, oh dang, this Bible is endorsed by Jesus himself. Let me pay $64.99 for it. And it just felt just because all of religion is, I'm not going to say that. Because I'm skeptical of people using religion to make money.
Yeah.
That is like it. Whenever I see that, I just naturally kind of resist it. And I
Ooh.
saw that, and I was like, "Nah, yeah, I'm over it." But yeah, I think I'll give it a try.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on it. I got some stuff to do. I got a crazy busy day. I'm gonna watch it again tonight.
Yeah,
I got some episodes left. It's pretty good. It's hard for me to watch anything. I've almost given up on podcasts today. Like today, I was listening to an audiobook because even podcasts are starting to suck.
yeah. I haven't listened to a consistently listened to a podcast in a while. Um, I thought that I was going to be like right on with Rob Bell. Like
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed the episodes I listened to, but I was thinking that that would be one that I would start at the beginning and listen all the way through because they're so interesting. But it's just so time consuming, especially
Yeah.
when like so I'm trying to do more office hours, like set schedule, like come into the office at 8:30 and I do my real estate stuff and really kind of taking control of all that instead of being reactive, being more proactive. So I lose 8:30 to 12 there. I guess I could listen to it during that, but uh, I don't know. I just don't have the capacity that I had recently for podcasts, and I've got a bunch that I want to listen to, and um, just haven't gotten around to it. And I think it's kind of the same with TV shows. Like I just don't feel like I have the time. Um, but there are two that I want to watch. I watched one episode of it's not going to be very helpful because I don't remember the names. Um, but they're like true crime kind of like um, investigation shows where like it's real life documentaries things of um, like murder investigations or whatever that just were botched or got the wrong guy or were just kind of never investigated, that sort of thing. um, kind of along the lines of, have you ever heard of a documentary called Innocence Lost about the West Memphis, Arkansas murders?
Mm-mm.
That's a really interesting story. And it got some popularity, especially among musicians, but it happened in the early 90s. There were I think it was three boys. I think it was three boys and four suspects, or it might have been four boys and three suspects. Um, were brutally murdered. They were like 8-year-old boys. They were sexually assaulted. It was a terrible deal. Um, and they found, I think it was three suspects that were like into heavy metal music and into like just kind of, they were perceived as being Satanists. I
Yeah.
don't think they were, but that's just like they wore Slayer shirts and Metallica shirts and long hair, and some people just thought they were Satanists. Um, well, they were on death row, and they've been on death row. They were just recently released. One of the kids had very low IQ. Like he was, I think that he was mentally. I'm not sure if whatever word we can use to describe him. I don't know. He
Yeah.
he was very low IQ. They interrogated him for I want to say 20 plus hours, and he ultimately confessed. They
Sure.
told him over and over again, you did this, you did this, you did this. And finally, he kind of confessed that he did it. And so they were all on death row. Um, well, this documentary reveals like all of the stuff that happened and the evidence that wasn't collected and the evidence that was destroyed and the suspects that they had, one of them being the dad who witnesses saw doing, like, it is just so obvious. Now, I'll preface this by saying they attempted the same thing with Making a Murderer. Did you ever see that?
Oh yeah.
And I felt like that was just I felt like that was just crap. Like I felt like the documentarian had an axe to grind, and they like I feel like they portrayed it incorrectly, and that may have been what happened in this other one. I don't know, but from what I saw, it just seems like it was a real travesty of justice. But it's interesting. You might enjoy it.
I'll check it out. Yeah, I was never a detective, so I don't know about this, but I've seen it like in in our on-scene investigations. Like whenever we show up, I've seen this happen, and it's always struck me as weird. I tried to never consciously do this, but I might have done it myself. It seems like sometimes when detectives, especially detectives, but when law enforcement in general get this idea, they're like, all right, how did this happen? And they put together this idea of like, oh, well, this is how it had to happen. They will laser in on
Mm-hmm.
this plan, on this suspect, on the way that it had, to the detriment of avoiding all other information that comes in.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen like in a low way, not with anything major, but like with someone coming from walking out of a hotel on West Kellogg, like obviously she's going to buy meth. And you come up like, "Hey, where are you going?" "I'm going to Walmart getting formula." "Oh yeah? What's in your purse?" And
Sure.
you're like,
Probably meth.
"Yeah, probably meth." And so that's like, the surface level, but
Yeah.
did you see that a lot?
Yeah, and so the one of the things that used to drive me absolutely crazy is when people would say, "I don't believe in circumstance," or what was it coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences. You know what coincidences are? Coincidences are not real. Like, no, actually, sometimes there's such a thing as coincidental, whatever. Like,
Yeah,
just because you can draw a line of correlation doesn't mean that it's true, and it doesn't mean that there's no other possible explanations. But I used to
right.
see that a lot. Like, oh, you're a burglar and you happen to be in this neighborhood. Come
Guess
on,
what? Got our
coincidences
suspect.
coincidences don't exist. So now
Yeah.
it's like 100% like forcing this thing to work. Um, but yeah, I saw it on detective level, but also just on patrol. Like, you're right. We figure out what we think happened, and then everything is geared around trying to prove that that's what happened.
And if you can't convince me, like if God himself doesn't come out of the clouds and say, that's not what happened, guess what? That's what happened. Like
Yeah.
I guarantee you those police thought they were right. Like in that thing that you're talking about.
I don't know.
What do you,
I don't
oh
know.
no?
I don't know. Yeah, because there's enough.
Well, at
There
the time when they were doing the investigation,
maybe some of them, but I mean, talk about ineptitude.
yeah.
Like just complete ineptness. Like complete. Did you graduate any state academy? Like, was there any requirements for you to take this job? But there were also aspects of like one of the dads was an informant for the police, and there was uh, indication that like they were looking the other way, and that they had made promises to this person and that person, and there was political pressure to find suspects, and they really ultimately found some kids that fit the bill. People were scared of them. They can't really defend themselves. Heck, one of them even confessed to it, despite the fact that he's got a low IQ. So yeah, I don't know about that one. There were probably some people in the investigation that thought they were doing the right thing, but I get what you're saying. I just don't think I don't think it happened in that one.
My wife watched a true crime thing recently, and I had just been walking through the room a few times, and stopped and like, oh, what are they talking about? And it seemed like to me that's exactly what happened. Like the police put together this early picture. This was a Las Vegas murder that involved this rich music producer. But when I was coming around, it seemed like the police just put together this idea real quick that made sense, kinda. It made sense on, especially with what the information that they had. It made sense on scene, and I mean, it's just mountains of evidence came in to the contrary. They're like, nope, we've got our guy. Case solved. And they're like, hey, there's someone that has confessed to this. And they're like, oh, he's doing it just for attention. Really?
Yeah. There was one show that I watched that was real good. Again, I don't remember the name of it, but it was about not Fred Durst, Robert Durst.
Okay.
Do you know about that?
Uh-uh.
That's pretty interesting. He was whenever they would talk about him, I would always think of Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit. But he was like a millionaire real estate tycoon in, I think, New York or something like that.
He did it all for the nookie, I could tell.
So you can take that cookie.
Cookie.
But basically, it's just like he was charged with murder. He was they found him not guilty despite tons and tons of evidence that he was. But then you come to find out that he just had a way, like he had a charisma about him that the jurors actually were on his side, like through this trial, and he was making them laugh, and it was just really interesting. There's 2 seasons though. You should definitely take some time to watch it if you can figure out what it's called, because I don't remember what it's called.
Do you hear screaming in my background? Is that coming through the mic at all?
No, is there screaming?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I might let you take care of that because I need to take care of some work here. But any parting words?
No. I'm gonna try to start getting these up a lot sooner. I still have about 3 in the can from previous that I want to upload, but especially like this one, since we're talking about the election and just current affairs, I feel like it's better for me to put them up sooner rather than later, and that's what I'm gonna try to start doing.
Yeah. I don't know that we really have as much editing taking place, or that needs to take place, as we did initially. Do you think?
No, not at all. Especially since we've cut out a lot of the uhs and ums, even though I still do it sometimes. The big thing was cutting out names, which I know that we're good on that now, and that's about it. And I do need, like today, there's 2 things of like where we each had to get up and get away from the camera for a little bit. I'll snip those out. But
Yeah.
besides that, this one's ready to go. What I do have to do is like snip those pieces out. I like to put the disclaimer. Last week I didn't do this, and I didn't realize it till afterwards, but I like to put the disclaimer up there and our little self-promotion piece at the end of it. But besides that, it's good to go. I like to sandwich it in between those 2 and cut out any distractions.
Yeah.
But besides that,
another thing, and it's weird, the fact that I'm doing it here, not in my house, I just feel like I could speak more freely.
Yeah.
And I feel like that helps a lot.
It does. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, man. But besides that, we're good.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna end the recording, and then I'll send it to you just as soon as I get it back.
Okay.
And as always, this week's episode was brought to you by Steadfast Real Estate Group of Heritage First Realty in Wichita, Kansas. Visit them online at Steadfast, that's SteadfastICT.com, steadfastict.com, or call them at area code 316-461-2806 for all your home buying needs in Wichita, the Wichita area of Kansas. For all your home buying needs in northeast Georgia, or really all in North Georgia, give me a call. I'm Clayton Blackwood. I'm part of the Hester Group, and we're under Harry Norman Realty. Give me a call at area code 316-409-7907, or visit my website at claytonblackwood.harrynorman.com. Clayton Blackwood is one word, and Harry Norman is one word. You know how the internet works. If you are in the Wichita area and you need a tub painted, Call my buddy Jed and his life partner Alex at H&L Resurfacing. Their phone number is area code 316-209-4674. They're both Marine Corps veterans, and that is a locally owned business. They have a track record of success. Okay, next week, or probably in a couple of days, we're going to pick up in a new episode. See you guys then. Love you. Bye.